Today we're gonna get into physical aging. Many of us think about aging and declines. We think about physical appearances such as wrinkles, decrease in muscles, and decrease in energies. We're gonna get all into that today. The natural processes of physical decline, ways we could either prevent or mitigate those declines in physical health with aging. A lot of these things that we do are preventable in terms of lifestyle activities. And we'll get into that and actually what I do, my regimen based on a lot of solid research and then some experimental things where I see a lot of promise. So my family had a Chinese restaurant for over 30 years. They started in their 20s, and as they grew older, they started to have issues. You don't work 7 days a week, 12-hour days with only literally 4th of July off without that having serious implications for health down the line. So when they were in their 50s, they started to feel this physical decline. So back in 2010, when I remember exactly at the restaurant, like my dad saying his heel was hurting and my mom's back was hurting from all that standing and just all that grueling aspects of restaurant life really took their tolls. Beyond like the mental part of it, it's like being at the restaurant, it's like you have to deal with customers, you have to deal with expiring inventory, things like going bad, because it's probably one of the worst businesses. 95% of restaurants, they close within about 5 years. It's just a really difficult industry. They were able to maintain that lifestyle for 30 years. And part of that, honestly, was based on survival. Here's a little video showing how restaurant life could lead to physical failures.
Mẹป่วยà?
Giờทำอย่างนี้อีกนะ
Muối, cao lẩu. Chọn, nayเลยครับนั่งเลยป๊าจัดไปสั่งมาเร็วต่ออะไร
So as this chart illustrates, we're really at our physical fitness in terms of peaks in our 20s, and then it starts to decline gradually in our 30s. So these are our peaks, not our beaks. Our physical fitness peaks. But we see that it goes down with time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're still not functioning. We see here that it's in our 20s and into our 30s of muscle mass and VO2 max. We start to see that be at its top in their 20s. However, this doesn't necessarily mean that these peaks can extend a little more. This is why exercise is so important, because it really extends this optimal period of the functioning, physically at least. So think about building these capacities. These will be ongoing theme about what we discuss as reserves. You could build physical reserves through muscle mass. So you build these physical reserves, right? But these reserves could also be cognitive and obviously financial reserves. So when we talk about physical reserves, this is why exercise is so important. Exercise in terms of strength training, resistance training, in terms of building muscle mass, but then also cardiovascular health. Muscle mass really is linked to the ability to process glucose, right? Sugars. And when muscle mass goes down as people age, we start to see these risks of certain aspects, such as become diabetes, right? Diabetes risk. Actually, I'm pre-diabetic. It was crazy to find out. I literally, once I turned 40, it's like, oh, you have pre-diabetes, right? And pre-diabetes is not all the way to diabetes. It's just you're at these elevated levels of sugars in your blood, and because it's related to muscle mass and other genetic factors, as you age, you're able to process that sugar less efficiently. So if you continue the same lifestyle, you're going to eventually lead to become diabetes levels. So even though we see these peaks in their 20s and into the early 30s, and it starts to go down from there, we're still able to function. But this is a natural decline that goes with the aging process. And these declines with aging process are normal until it impedes function. That is the key. And when we talk about functioning, it's in many domains in terms of life, work life, or other domains of being able to live, right? Usually when we get into the later ages, we start to see issues with activities of daily living, like toileting and all those aspects of getting up, ADLs. We also start to see other aspects as people really get into the later ages, IADLs. Instrumental activities of daily living. These involve certain things like being able to executive functioning aspects, such as like paying the bills, being able to make like a shopping list. So those are markers of when we start to see impediments to functioning, right? Physical functioning. So these physical functioning declines with age naturally, but it's only when it gets at crosses these thresholds of dysfunction is when we have to worry. And worry meaning it impedes. So a lot of the time you could continue able to physically function if you shape your environments, just like I know when we are young, we want to use our physicality into doing sports and contact sports like football and everything, and we start to go towards less contact sports like golf or coaching in football, right? These different aspects. So this is where you're still able to function, but you just shift the activities that you're doing to maintain to function. And we'll get into, when we talk about aging in place, and living situations, people want to live in their communities longer. So how do we maintain functioning is to really shape our homes and communities around us. So aging does not cause diabetes. It just makes you more prone. As we see here, in your 30s and mid-30s, it starts to happen. It happened to me, becoming pre-diabetic. Two really big culprits in that. First one is muscle mass. As we age, especially into our 30s and 40s, our muscle mass naturally declines, right? And to the point of when it starts to become gradual until a dysfunction, right? This process is called sarcopenia. The muscles are really ways of think about like a vacuum of like sugars, right? And able to process glucose. When you have more muscle, you're able to process glucose more, right? Sugar ingestion more. So the less muscle mass you have, the less you're able to process sugars. Likewise, your pancreas, essentially the organ that really makes you more, produces like the insulin in terms of processing sugar, it gets like a little more less efficient. And your body starts to essentially become insulin resistant. Meaning that there's a bunch, your body doesn't really want to process all that sugar anymore efficiently. So pretty much these are the two big culprits with aging that make you a little more susceptible with aging. So you can't maintain the eating sugar daddies and all those other candies as you did when you were younger generally, because you have less muscle to process, and then your pancreas is less efficient at processing that as well. So that's one of the reasons why we are more susceptible to such a metabolic disease such as diabetes. When you become more insulin resistant, meaning you have elevated sugar levels in your blood, that just fucks your whole body up. Just think about your body as a big chemistry experiment that produces electricity, right? That's how neurons fire and everything. So once you mess with that chemistry with elevated sugar levels, this is when we see many of these issues, particularly in the kidneys, right? With nephritis, meaning kidney failure, and people have to get dialysis. And then this is also when we see issues with the limbs and blood circulation. And this is where a lot of these horror stories of people, because of diabetes, have to cut off, amputate a limb, or certain aspects have to get cut off, because it messes up this chemistry that we have in our blood. So likewise, it also ages our organs much faster, right? Because of this insulin resistance, right? Many of these, in terms of lifestyle, a lot of people in the US also have these sleeping issues. Many of these sleeping issues also exacerbate all of this process of the body chemistry, because what sleep really does is a great reset, right? It's like a restorative process to helping the body heal, especially processing sugars and beyond consolidating memories, right? But how do we intervene on the aspects, right? So a couple of things that we kind of right? We know about exercise, both aerobic and resistance training, right? The strength training. So both have their different functions. So here is actually my Peloton for my aerobic usually. And then the resistance, I have my weights over there. Part of all of this also is physical activity, right? Being able to keep up with physical activity. And this is one of the hardest parts, especially when muscle strength and performance starts to decline with age. People want to do less and less exercise. So that's like the number one intervention. The second one is about diet. Right, obviously eating healthy, everybody knows about eating healthy. Like I said before, I eat a lot of chicken nuggets, Raging Cane's and all that stuff. It's delicious. But part of all of this, especially as so many foods these days have so much sugar, so high in sugars, not just about like actual pure sugar, but corn syrup, right? High fructose corn syrup, all these other things that are proxies for sugars, right? The sweeteners. So these are one things in terms of diet, right? To really manage. And then as we discussed before about sleep, right? People get less sleep as people age, but sleep becomes less efficient. So we start to have more what's called fragmentation in our sleep, meaning our sleep, even though we might sleep maybe the same 8 to 7 hours, it does less and less restorative because it's less efficient. One experimental thing I do is a couple of these supplements, right? Supplements are really hard because there's just so many different supplements, right, out there. Here's what I take, especially just making it easier in my daily coffee and tea. 1 part matcha, scoop of that. Collagen peptide. Tastes like midlife. This bro wants some.
Leave me alone!
Well, 500 grams of magnesium I take. Costco.com, of course. The different types of magnesium. I try to get the blended one with both citrate and glycerate. And then this is the most important one, is about eye health. Pretty much taking 2 of these things. I usually get the one that has to do with this clinical trial results. I don't know if this one works, but I take cinnamon too. This multivitamin, but meh, I bear it. I don't notice a difference with this. Sometimes with the cinnamon, but these 2 most important ones, energy levels and sleep and eye health. So those supplements, right, include a bunch of things that I take for my eye health, which really has been shown from this randomized control study to be really beneficial to eye health as it relates to aging. That's why I take that. And then also magnesium, really relating to energy levels and being able to have better sleep. The other stuff I take with the multivitamin and cinnamon, I don't know. That's kind of a mixed bag of research, of good research. But these 2, 100% great evidence for taking them. I do also, as you saw in my coffee, I take also biotin for my lovely skin and hair. and then really creatine, really for strength purposes. It doesn't make you stronger. It's not like steroids, creatine, but it really gives me an extra boost when I work out, doing both like strength training and when I do the bike and aerobic exercises. So this is just a booster. I know there's a lot of research, a crazy amount of research on the benefits of creatine, but TikTok University research overblows a lot of this, right? Like a lot of these TikTokers will say like, this is a magic drug and it will fix aging and actually reverse aging. You'll be like Benjamin Button and all these aspects of like how great creatine is and so cheap, but that gets a little overblown because it's really just a booster, right? In terms of it activates whatever your muscles already you're having, those capacities. It just provides a little, essentially it's just an extra lift me up in that sense. And so you're able to work out harder. Yeah, so those are the interventions. And then one other experimental thing I do is the sauna. Well, there's a lot of mixed research on sauna. It depends on how you use it. But one of the things that have clear evidence is that it helps reduce sodium levels in terms of, obviously, it's just, you're just sweating it out, right? sauna helps that, and then it also helps me test, like, I get the best ideas in the sauna because it's one of the few areas that I am able to just like focus and engage in mindfulness. Mixed evidence for sauna, but that is one thing I really like to do more like psychologically than maybe than physically. I like to test myself. So those are the 5 interventions, right? In terms of exercise, diet, sleep, supplements, and particularly the ones I take. There's a bunch of other ones I don't want to get into. I'm just letting you know it's the ones I take, and I'll link the actual articles into the description so you could read yourself. So the 3 takeaways from here, right? That there are natural declines in terms of the physical self with age. Declines are into physical health are natural, but it only becomes at its peak in their 20s and 30s and starts to decline from there. But meaning it declining doesn't mean that you're still not able to function well and healthy. Likewise, we extend these functions through building reserves, right? These physical reserves with exercise, both muscle and resistant, along with aerobic exercises, right? So exercising both the muscles and then the heart, and really this relating to the improving the metabolic system. And a lot of those aspects are able to help us function longer, right? Building our physical reserves through these capacities. Lastly, these interventions, right? There's a lot of interventions that we can take, particularly in obviously exercise, but also in diet. Especially we can't maintain the same lifestyle generally as when we're younger, and this is why diet is important to compensate for the body chemistry and the less efficiency because of decreased muscle mass and increase of insulin resistance. And also sleep. We have less efficient sleep, right? More fragmentation as we get older. And also supplements, right? I don't know, honestly, a lot of supplements we pee out, right? And there's just so much out there and it's a crazy industry. But these are some empirical evidence things that in terms of magnesium and then the AREDS for eye health. And all this together, right? We're able to actually, once we get the knowledge of that, then we're able to really shape our environment and lifestyle to keep us functioning longer, right? And it's all about being able to function. And functioning is one of the keys to why we want to live longer, right? But you don't just want to live longer for its longer sake. We want to be able to continue doing and functioning in society longer. This is why the old adage, right, is health is wealth, right? Because it doesn't really matter how much money you might accumulate later in life sometimes. It's like, if you aren't able to function and your ability to use it, what's the point of life, right? So this is why it's so important to have this life course perspective that we will keep on going throughout this semester, because it's like what you do earlier in life really, really impacts what you do later in life. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time. Peace.
Damn, boy.
Bye. See you later.